I'm Haley Tatro, the Agronomy Extension Specialist with the Saskatchewan Wheat Development Commission. We're out in a wheat field here today. As you can see, it's fully headed out. We're just north of Saskatoon. It's a beautiful morning, but it's pretty hot. So with the crop quickly advancing, we can see that it's fully headed out here. You can pretty much hear the crop growing in this heat. It's been gorgeous out. So we're going to talk today about fusarium head blight. So traditional fusarium head blight timing for fungicide application is when 75% of the heads are fully emerged, all the way until full anthesis, which is when the main stem, the head on the main stem, is in full anthesis or flowering. So that's BBCH 59, that's 75% head emergence, all the way to BBH 65, which is full anthesis. So that's our traditional recommendation. That's what the label says for most of our FHB products. But recent research at the University of Saskatchewan with Dr. Gursahib Singh and Randy Kuchar has shown us that actually applying fungicide too early, so at that point they applied at 75% head emergence, BBCH 59 was actually inefficient in controlling FHB damage, and it was the same as the untreated check. So what that shows us is that applying fungicide too early actually isn't really going to provide us any ROI or an economic benefit. So what's important is really timing that FHB product with anthesis, so getting it as close to BBCH 65 as possible. In their study, they found that BBCH 61, which is the very start of anthesis, so when you just see those little yellow anthers starting in the middle of the plant, that's the very start of the window of ideal application, all the way to BBCH 69, which is at the end of anthesis when the anthers are kind of drying up, they're turning white, and they're just starting to fall off. So it showed that it doesn't really pay to spray too early, but definitely you're going to see a high benefit in a conducive environment by spraying between that BBCH 61 and 69. So really what we can take away from the study is that timing is so important and that we need to try and get as close to anthesis as possible. Obviously that's not going to be realistic everywhere because time management is such a factor with all the acres that we have, but it's really important to maybe push that window a little bit later than spraying too early when those wheat heads are just emerging, because they really haven't seen much benefit. So this study was done on durum and they're continuing this work on wheat, so we're really excited to see more numbers from these results coming in. And so now that we've talked about kind of the application timing of fusarium head blight, let's maybe talk a little bit about how we decide if we're at a high risk situation for FHB. So obviously this year has been hot and it's been dry. So FHB really likes the heat, but it also really likes moisture and humidity. And so a lot of areas in the province aren't seeing that moisture or humidity. So one tool that we've developed at Sask Wheat, we produce the fusarium head blight risk maps, which you can find on our website, saskwheat.ca. Under the Agronomy tab, there's an entire section dedicated to fusarium head blight management. So click on that and you can enter in your head timing when you're estimating that head is going to come out of the boot, and then it'll predict your risk. And it's important to remember that this is an environmental risk. So this is telling us, it's not taking into account our field history, it's not taking into account our genetics, our varieties. So this is the environmental risk. Is the environment conducive to disease? Yes or no, and it'll tell you your risk in your area. So that's a really handy tool in the toolbox of making decisions, because we know that FHB fungicides are expensive and we really want to get the best return on investment, and we don't want to have to spray unnecessarily. So that's an important factor to consider, is are we at risk for our environment? And then looking at what is our field history, what is our variety like, is it very susceptible to fusarium, is it not? And then has fusarium been an issue in the past on these fields, are all really things to take into consideration. So the other thing to think about is if we do decide to spray, let's make sure we're applying it with adequate boom heights. We're using coarse sprays, we're using nozzles that are forward facing or dual to get the best coverage, and then making sure we're using adequate water volume is so important, because it needs to get good coverage. So these are all important factors to consider with fusarium head blight, but number one takeaway from this research that we found was that applying your fungicide as close to anthesis as possible is how you're going to get the best return on investment.